Hello, and good evening, and welcome to Talk Back with Daddy's Girls. My name is Cynthia Graham, and I'm your host.
My name is Lynette Patton, and I'm your co-host, and we are excited to have you back for another episode where our desire is to motivate, educate, inspire, and empower our viewers.
Yes, and we are so excited tonight to have Dr. Jessica Young Brown with us tonight. She is a phenomenal clinical psychologist from the Richmond, Virginia area and all across the nation, coming and helping those that are in the communities that need to know about mental health and mental health issues. We are so excited that you came to join us tonight and share your knowledge concerning this particular situation and concern that concern the family as well as the Black church. Dr. Brown, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Welcome,
thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited. As we were reading and browsing through your book, Making Room at the Well, and we just came to realize that this is such a phenomenal resource for the family, for the Black church, for the lay person, for men, women, boy, and girl. That's what I got out of it, right?
Absolutely.
It's for everybody. But we were wondering, Dr. Brown, making space at the well, what does that actually mean?
Sure. So making space at the well really comes from my experience working with churches to try to understand and make sense of mental health concerns, right? Mm-hmm. So we all know there are people with mental health concerns in all of our churches, mm-hmm. and we all experience a wide range of emotions. That's just a part of what makes us human. At the same time, some of the religious and spiritual messages that we have in churches can lead us to try to not attend to those emotional concerns, mm-hmm. and even more so not seek out professional support. Mm-hmm. And so the frame for the book is really that the well is a metaphor for a place where people can come and get healing. And from my perspective, the church should absolutely be that. In order to really live into that mission, though, we need to think about how people's mental and emotional health intersects and interacts with their spiritual well-being, with their relationships, with everything that they do. And I think the church is really a great place for us to attend to those needs in a meaningful way.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to read a segment that is in your book, in your introduction, and it was very powerful and very eye-opening and enlightening. It says, as Black Americans, we hold secrets about our mental and emotional troubles. Families make silent pacts to keep our business private. We develop code words to cover up psychotic breaks, suicides, and manic episodes. We say family members are not feeling well when we really have, they haven't been able to get out of bed for weeks due to deep depression. We call suicides accidents to avoid the shame of admitting that a family member did not feel life was worth living. And we excuse dysfunctional behavior saying, oh, that's just the way they are, rather than holding people accountable for seeking out help and becoming well. So it seems as though this is something that's rampant in the family as well. These behaviors and how we are, trained or raised to deal with mental health issues. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Sure. So I think, mental health stigma, negative attitudes and beliefs about mental health conditions is something that a lot of people experience. In the Black community, I think it's compounded for us, especially in America, because if you think about our history here in this country, one of the ways our ancestors survived was to really just take it on the chin and keep going, right? Mm-hmm. We didn't have a lot of room for error. There was nobody attending to the mental health needs of our enslaved ancestors. There was nobody attending to the mental health needs of people a generation before us who were marching in protests and getting hosed down by police, right? And so I think we've developed a strategy that really is about survival, where we just have to keep going. I mean, I think about the example of Ruby Bridges as a young child integrating a school and how stoic and emotionless she was. And think about how scared she must have been, right?
Mhm.
That's not our natural human condition, but we've had to do that to survive in this country. So that even now in 2022, many of us are still taking on that need, that perceived need, I would argue, to just keep going no matter what, to keep our business secret, to not talk about things. And not to mention, we have a history in this country of also not being treated appropriately by medical professionals. So there's a distrust of the other, right? And mental health professionals fall into that category. And so I think for that reason, the church is such an important piece of this puzzle of mental health and the Black family and the Black community, because we know, where do we go? To our pastor, right? We go to that faith community because that's been our safe space. And so I think we need to make it a safe space for all of those conversations, right? And we already have those relationships, so it's a place to start.
Yes.
So what I was thinking about also as I was reading the book, and I'm going to go back to the stigma behind, in the church, we feel like, of course, Jesus is the answer for everything. And I agree with that to a certain extent. But there comes to a place in a space where we have to be educated enough to know when we need to refer outside of the church, outside of the pastor. So in saying that, how do we get to that space and that place as leaders in the church, or even as lay people dealing with our family members? How do we get to that space? And I guess education is the beginning of it. So can you kind of give us some thoughts on that, Dr. Brown? How do we reach out to those that have irregular or irrational behaviors and things of that nature? How do we learn true mental illness from dysfunctional behavior?
Yeah, so the first piece I would say is, in order to think about talking to someone about going to see a therapist, you actually don't really need to distinguish between those things, right? Because, call me biased, of course, because I am a therapist. I think everybody should go to therapy. Anybody who I've ever taught will tell you I've told them to go to therapy, right? So I think it's an important part of how we support our mental health in general. But the first piece I'll say is, when we have relationship with people, we know when they are not themselves, right? And so I think that's the first sign. If somebody you love is behaving in ways that just don't seem like them, that's a sign. Maybe they need to talk to someone. If they're sad all the time, if they seem like they're really short or irritable or frustrated all the time, if they're using substances and that's increasing and becoming concerning, right? Often people get to the point where they're having trouble in lots of different areas, right? So they might be having problems at work and problems at home and problems, with friends. All of those kinds of things are indicators that maybe someone needs to seek a therapist. And I think the other piece for us as believers that's so important is, yes, we believe that Jesus is the answer. And we also need to believe that God is big enough to equip mental health professionals too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And so for me, being a mental health professional is absolutely a calling. I have people who come to me and said, I prayed and yours was the first name that came up on the internet, so that's why I called you. Right. Or I have people who will pray in session. We use scriptures as affirmations. Right. So there are those of us who are working in mental health who are able to navigate with people through this process so they don't have to leave their faith outside of the therapeutic process, right? I've got the training, I have the clinical skill. I'm also inviting the Holy Spirit into that therapy room, right? And so we can do all of that at the same time. And that's just how big God is. Yes. So I think when we're doing a referral, it's important to deliver that information too, right? That we're not really saying, oh, God can't take this, we need to go somewhere else. What we're saying is, let's let God use all the skills God has to help you work through whatever this challenge is. And I'm going to be here to support you. But now I can do that in a way that's healthy for both of us. And you can get those needs met with someone who is skilled to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's powerful. That's very powerful. So let me ask you something. What are some successful tips that you can share as to how to inspire or empower those that may be struggling to actually seek the help? What are some successful, ways that families can encourage, or best friends, or even, pastors to actually seek professional help?
Yeah, so there's a big section in the book about this, and this is one of my soapbox speeches for pastors and church leaders, so I'll try to keep it brief, which is, as the church, those of us who are in leadership, those of us who are engaging in the pastoral care ministry of the church, we have to be prepared. So before someone ever comes to us and says, I'm dealing with feeling sad or anxious, we need to know who the people are in our area that we can refer to. We've got to do some research, because what we know about the way people sort of manage emotional crises, especially, is that when someone talks about a crisis, we want to be able to connect them with a resource right then. That's the way they're most likely to be successful.
Yeah.
So that means right now, even if you can't think of anybody who might need a therapist, go online and start doing some searches. Build a list of 3 or 4 or 5 therapists in your area so that when the time comes, you'll have that list ready. So that's the first piece that I think is really important. And we can start doing that now. The second piece is to try to articulate very clearly why you feel the person needs some additional support. So you can say, sis, I've noticed the past couple of times I've seen you, you've been really sad and you just haven't seemed like yourself. I'm concerned about you and I want to help you. Can we pull in some additional support so you can feel better? Okay. I'm not throwing you out. I'm not trying to say I can't help you. I'm just saying I really want us to be able to work together, right? And then offer to support them in that. Call the therapist with them. If they're going to an in-person appointment and you have the time, you can offer to go with them to that first appointment and wait outside, right? Check in with them after you say, hey, were you able to make that call? Were you able to schedule an appointment, right? Because we want to make it really clear, I still care and I'm still here for you. I just have to do that in a different way.
Yes, I think that follow-up is a big deal.
Yes,
that follow-up is a big deal.
Definitely. I feel like people are very apprehensive when it comes to mental health, and and I think when we show love and people feel like you're not just trying to be in their business or whatever, that's very important. It really is, and that's really good. That's great. That's great. So
and the other thing I do, I'm sorry for cutting you off. The other thing I do is just say to people, listen, I go to therapy regularly, right? Because I'm Dr. Brown. I don't seem like, I go to therapy every other week religiously, right? I go to therapy and I go to church regularly. And so I think also those of us who've been to therapy can talk about our experiences as a way to bring some of that stigma down too, right? Now it's not this big scary boogeyman. It's just something I do, just like I go to my primary care doctor, just like I go to my dentist, just like I go get my well woman exam every year, right? It's one of the ways I take care of myself.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about that. That's really inspiring, because I was thinking that if we would take the lead, as we even prepare the list, maybe make an appointment for ourselves, so that if we do encounter a loved one or a friend who's struggling, we can actually say, I went myself and I got what I got out of it,
Absolutely. That can be really powerful.
So let me ask you this. Recently we've had several young people and old people committing suicide. And I was just wondering, and as I was thinking about this, and a lot of times their loved ones, they say, we had no idea. We didn't see it coming. We didn't, this took us by surprise. I was just wondering, do you think that a lot of times they didn't see because they didn't want to see? Or you really think that they didn't see because there were no signs?
I will say it's more likely that they didn't recognize the signs, or so it's not the kind of thing where we want to place blame on people's families, because I don't think people intentionally ignore signs, right? But I do think we need to do a better job as the mental health community about really educating about the signs that someone might be considering suicide, especially because one of the things that can actually be most helpful to people who are contemplating suicide, that's very hard for the average person to do, is ask them whether they are contemplating suicide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's really scary to do, right? As a person, especially if it's somebody you love, it's like you don't even want to think about it. But what we know about people who experience suicidal ideation is that the vast majority of people who contemplate suicide do not want to die. They just don't see other options. And so when a friend or family member intervenes, that's like issuing a lifeline to them. So it's very important that we educate ourselves. There's a great program that's publicly funded. It's usually free or very low cost, called Mental Health First Aid, that churches, other community organizations can get a trainer to come and offer a training. And there's a big piece that they do in mental health first aid about what to do if you think someone might be contemplating suicide. And one of the first things is to ask directly. Now, you don't try to change their mind or anything like that. But if they say yes, or any version of yes, then you're going back to what we were just talking about, which is getting them connected with a mental health provider, right? And so again, signs are things like big shifts in behavior, people who have had a series of big losses or shifts in their lives are especially at risk. Of course, people who have a history of mental health conditions. The other thing that we saw in some of the more public cases of people dying by suicide recently is the pressure that people feel around being in a public role, right? And just how overwhelming that can be. And often those folks are in a situation where lots of people are looking at them, but they don't necessarily have people close to them or people they can confide in, right? And so I think anytime we have an opportunity to be the person that someone confides in, we should do that, right? And as we're kind of working to refer them to a skilled mental health provider, we also stay in contact and let them know, I'm here for you, I'm supporting you. And the other thing we can do, as I said, is to simply ask, have you been thinking about hurting yourself? It's hard. We don't want to do it. We don't want to bring it up. But it's important to keep in mind that you're never going to plant that idea in someone's head, right? So if they're not contemplating suicide, you asking is not going to make them consider it as an option. But if they are, and you ask, it's your way of saying, I really am here if you need to talk about it. And that can make the difference. It really can. It can really make the difference between life or death.
Yeah. So you were talking about this lifeline. So that's where I believe, is that where the well comes in?
Absolutely.
So yeah, describe to us about this well.
So, think about in biblical times what the well was, right? It was necessary in that people needed water. So people had to go there every day to get water so they could do the task they needed to do for the day. But it was also a communal gathering place, right? People shared news and gossip and caught up with friends, right? And so it's about community. It's about sustaining our families. It's also about being a group of people who are committed to doing life together, right? We all gather at a certain time. We get what we need. We go on and do the work we're called to do, but then we all return back, right? And for me, that's really what the church can be. It's this place where we come to get sustenance, to be in community, and then what the Great Commission says, right? Go ye therefore. So go out. But we have to be filled at the well in order to do the work we're called to do. And that's what we can do if we give people the space to bring their full selves to church. We run into trouble if the only way I can show up at the well is if I look like I have it all together and I can't really let people know when I'm struggling. Because then how can I get my needs met? Then we're doing people a disservice.
Right.
That's so true.
Now, you talked about what happens at this well, right? So one of the things that you brought in was, to chit chat and to gossip. Can you tell us as a community how we can make that well a safe place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think a part of what we have to do really is challenge ourselves to think about people the way Jesus thought about people. Right? There's a great distinction in the Gospels between the way Jesus treated the community outcasts and the way the church folks treated the community outcasts. Right? Jesus welcomed everyone into community. Jesus built relationship with everyone, and they didn't have to present a certain way in order to be healed or seen by him. I think the challenge we face as the church sometimes is, anytime you get a bunch of people together, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be some drama, because that's how human beings are. And we should endeavor to not let that define our experiences, right, and not let that define our community. So sometimes we have to check ourselves and really ask, am I operating in love with this person? Right. Or, as some of our apostolic friends will say, am I operating in the flesh with this person? Right? Yeah. I think it's something that we always have to keep in mind, because our human nature sometimes is judgment, is, othering people because they don't look a certain way or behave a certain way. Mm-hmm. But, years ago now, there was that big "what would Jesus do" movement, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. I still think that's a relevant question. Would Jesus be treating this person the way I'm treating them?
Absolutely.
Very much so. Wow. Dr. Brown, you have given us so much food for thought.
Yes.
So much food for thought. And brought clarity to a lot of things for a lot of people, I'm sure. Can you tell everyone where they can get to Making Room at the Well?
Sure. So Making Space at the Well can be bought on Amazon. You can get it from the publisher website, Judson Press. Or if you want a signed copy, you can go to my website, drjessicabrown.com. It's also available on Kindle. So there are lots of options. It's a quick read. I think it's pretty accessible. So I absolutely encourage you to check it out.
Thank you so much. In parting, Dr. Brown, do you have anything that you want to tell us in parting to motivate, inspire, empower, educate?
Sure. So what I would say is that all of us as humans have symptoms. Sometimes we have struggles. We become overwhelmed. That is a part of the human experience. What we believe about God is that God can attend to all of those areas in our lives. And so the promise is that if we can be open about it, we can talk to God about it and talk to our safe people about it, we will be able to get what we need, and we can move into a place where our mental health is at a place where we're happy about it. It's not always going to be perfect, but we can seek to be well overall.
Yes, absolutely. That's the important part, seeking, seeking. Thank you again. Dr. Brown, where can we find you on social media?
Yes, so I'm Dr. Jessica Brown on all the things, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Please follow me and engage.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so very, very much. And we look forward to having another conversation about mental health.
Yes, thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. So that was very powerful.
That was awesome.
I think that it gave a lot of people food for thought, as we're in this season where I think the pandemic kind of put people in this space where depression, anxiety, and all of that stuff really flared up.
Yeah, especially with the isolation piece of it, yes.
Definitely. But I think she gave us a resource that we can go to get help, to be able to be a help to other people and to ourselves.
Absolutely. I was really encouraged to, one, make my own appointment, to be that leader, to, get my list together and actually, do my own appointment, so that if I do have a family or a friend, then I can actually speak from personal experience and not make them feel like they're alone, that, I went as well. I did this as well.
Definitely. So I'm just elated to just go back into this book and peruse over it some more and dig deeper, so that we can be on point in this season where so many people need help.
Absolutely. And to truly be that well.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll meet you at the well.
Yes. See you later.
Bye-bye.